and now currently joined in the studio by former Tory party chair Jake Berry. And Jake, you're our Conservative member this evening to speak on behalf of all of this. Of course, you don't speak on behalf of all of the Conservative Party. And in terms of what cohesion is looking like at the moment within the party, I mean, how much do you back what happened today?
Well, look, what an interesting day it's been. I mean, the first thing is it was a bold move, removing Suella. She clearly has a significant element of support in the party, but clearly the Prime Minister thought it was the right thing to do. We can talk in a moment about how that will play out on Wednesday when the Rwanda decision comes out. That may see Suella become one of his fiercest critics from the backbenchers. And the other really eye-catching move was the return of David Cameron. I don't think anyone expected that. The thing I'm most amazed about, knowing Number 10 well from my time there as party chairman, is that it didn't leak. It was a very well-kept secret in Westminster, and I think Rishi Sunak and his team should be applauded for that, if nothing else.
So you weren't aware at all?
No, I wasn't. I think David Cameron coming back will be welcomed by lots. I won my first election as a Cameroonian Conservative, although I do think it poses significant challenges. First of all, the Speaker of the House of Commons, Lindsay Hoyle, has already made his views known that he's deeply uncomfortable that with a war in Ukraine, a war in the Middle East and other international challenges, that MPs, including me, will not have the right to question the Foreign Secretary, which I think is a big challenge in terms of can he actually do the job from the House of Lords. That's very unusual. I think it was about 100 years ago the last time it happened. And the second point, there's lots of things that sort of follow David Cameron round, which makes some members of mine partly uncomfortable, not least the fact that when he failed to get his way on Brexit, he left saying he couldn't support a government that was going to deliver Brexit. He's now in charge of all future policy in terms of Brexit as Foreign Secretary. And also, I think people have some questions about his ongoing relationship. I know he's resigned all of his directorships today, but his cosy relationship with China that he's had over the last few years, and whether that sits well with UK government policy. So it's not risk-free. It's a bold move by the Prime Minister.
OK, that's quite a carefully selected language there. Do you back the decision then to bring Cameron back? It sounds like you don't.
Well, no, look, I mean, what the Prime Minister's made clear in this reshuffle is that it is his government. He has washed out lots of people who were associated with previous administrations, whether it's Liz Truss's administration or Boris Johnson's administration, and he has been clear that he is going to fight it as Prime Minister with the cabinet that he has put together. Look, with David Cameron, I think it's too early to say. I know it's a bit boring for your viewers that I'm not going to sort of pin my colours to the mast today. It could be an absolute triumph, because it does show that sensible people are willing. You know, Rishi's 20% behind in the polls, 24% in some polls, and David Cameron, who's got a lot to lose in terms of his personal reputation, has come back and said, I believe in the Prime Minister. I believe that the Conservatives have still got a lot more to give. And I think that's a bold vision, and one we just simply don't know whether it succeed at this point.
Look, you mentioned there about Sunak kind of washing out certain facets of the party. What would you say then to Conservative voters who say, you often hear him being called the unelected Prime Minister. He got in de facto because Truss went. Then you've got a Foreign Secretary who was not actually an MP. He's had to be made a peer.
Also unelected.
Also unelected. So what are you saying to Conservative voters in terms of what your party's offering them if they've got an unelected PM, if we're going to use that term, and then an unelected Foreign Secretary?
Well, whatever you think about the British Constitution, we select Prime Ministers as leaders of parties rather than the presidential system. Maybe we should move to that, but it's not the system we currently have. And Prime Ministers are free to put their cabinets together as they would like to. What I do think is quite interesting is what does this say about future reshuffles? If the top jobs in government are not going to go to sitting members of Parliament, whichever party they may be in, that gives future Prime Ministers great freedom. Maybe we will see, I don't know, Alan Sugar as a future business secretary under a Labour government or a Conservative government. I mean, he is already in the Lords. He may not be the right example to use, but it does give considerable latitude to Prime Ministers.
It does set a strange precedent, like you said there, and it does open it wide. Does it not then feel insulting to some of the 350 sitting Conservative MPs that they're not up to the job of being Foreign Secretary?
Well, I don't think that's what David Cameron's appointment shows. I think it shows that, you know, as a proven statesman, he's coming back. I think more Conservative MPs will be concerned about his position on China and his position on Brexit than they will be about whether he just happens to be elected. I mean, he has won elections.
Do you think he'll be able to sit by as Foreign Secretary and not aspire to be leader alongside Sunak?
No, I don't think David Cameron has that in mind. He's come back. He still believes in the Conservative Party as I do. He clearly believes as I do in Rishi Sunak and his vision. And he's put, not in considerable risk. He's put his own personal capital into making sure we go on and win that election.
What do you say to the concept that this all feels a little bit last ditch, a last roll of the dice for a party that's on its way out?
Look, the party is the underdog at the moment. It's 20 points behind in the polls. It's clear that we have to do something to refresh our offer to the British public. I think this was probably long overdue, and we will wait and see whether it's a success. Someone today reminded me of Gordon Brown bringing back Peter Mandelson in the last days of his government, and that helped turn the Labour Party around. OK, they didn't win the 2010 election, but they prevented the Conservative Party getting a majority. I'm more ambitious than that, but I wonder if David Cameron's been brought in as that steady hand on the tiller to reassure voters and colleagues.
I mean, steady hand on the tiller, it's just all change all of the time. And I think to some extent, the public don't really follow reshuffles as much as politicians and journalists do, but all they're seeing is a ton of change. Are you really delivering what voters want?
Well, I push back on that because this is the first significant reshuffle Rishi Sunak's had. He made some changes, including firing me when he became Prime Minister. But this is the first opportunity he has had to put his Sunak stamp on the government. I mean, he will personally live or die electorally by the decisions he has made today. So if this proves to be a masterstroke and he comes back, as I hope he will do, and we will do with the majority after the next election, we will look back on today and say this is the boldest and best thing any Prime Minister has ever done. If it doesn't turn out like that, unfortunately, and we lose the election, which I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure we don't, then Rishi Sunak, David Cameron and everyone around him will be washed away with that tide.